Hello, everyone. How are you? We're going to wait for our special guests here today. While we're waiting, my name's Andy Morbitzer, and Nicole Peterson's here on the phone, my wife, and we represent XCO2 Network, which is the distribution arm for our sister company, CME. So we're going to really kind of change things up today. We're not going to have a quote unquote slide presentation today. We have something far more valuable than me talking. Many of you know me and Nicole, but you don't know Ralph Carmichael and Shenna Fortner, which are the CEO and CFO of our sister company. So we're going to introduce those folks here today. Mute you, Ralph, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. Sheena doesn't have the link.
Okay, let me send that to her right now.
And I would love to say I know how to change the background where it looks like I'm in space, but I actually don't.
I don't either. I would always have to ask Nicole for something like that. Okay, yeah. I got it right here. All right.
Ralph, just go with you're out of this world. There you go.
Okay, Sheena just got the link. Okay. Well, welcome to the call, Ralph. I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you having us.
Yeah, well, we'll wait one brief moment here on Sheena, and I'll unmute her and see if I can get her on board. You're actually floating in outer space, Ralph.
No, I know. I know. I put that on as a joke on one of my backgrounds, and now I don't know how to get rid of it.
Nice. Well, I supported the Sparty shirt today. I got my green on. All right.
There you go. Well, we're playing Akron tomorrow, but I'm getting a lot of emails. They want me to go to the UK for the funeral of the Queen, but I'm in line for the throne. So,
gotcha.
The Carmichaels are first cousins to Mary Queen of Scots. As a result, they keep your genealogy, and they maintain a list of 500 like in line for the throne, and I'm in the 400s.
Wow.
Yeah.
All of it. For those of you that don't know, that are on the call here live, Ralph is a very interesting fella, from sleeping and visiting the White House to being a professional ski instructor to being the guru of Wall Street.
I've done a lot of things in my life. The royal stuff is just I was born into it.
That must be nice.
Because of my last name.
I see.
And it is what it is.
I hear you. Okay, how much longer would let's see, we're waiting still on Sheena, so we'll give her just a couple more seconds here and see if she can get on the call with us. And there she is. Hear me, Sheena? If you could just unmute, and we should be good. There she is. Welcome to the call, Sheena. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you?
Oh, very well. We're excited to have you and Ralph on, and we were talking about royalty while you were gone, and Ralph's in line for the throne. His hierarchy, or his last name, brings us to he could be king like 500 people down the list. So it's all good. So
my other half's Italian, so I can get in touch with my Italian family to get rid of those other 500.
Well, there you go.
Obviously.
Well, welcome to the call, guys. We appreciate it. And most of the people we know on this call already know me and Nicole, but what they don't know is who's behind the sister company, who's driving the assets under management, and who are the professionals in this new vertical we're calling carbon credit. So I'm going to get started with a real easy question for Sheena, and then I'm going to hit Ralph with the more difficult one. So Sheena, I want to know, you've been doing this for a long time. You've got a lot of assets under management. When did you know, or when did you have your aha moment that this is what you wanted to do with some of your time or portion of your life? Where did that start, and how did that come about?
That's a good question, Andy. So the aha moment, when I was in Vermont in 2015, when the RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, was started in the United States. And I realized that carbon offsets are a mechanism of climate mitigation. and that can be utilized. And scalability, the financial structure that is needed to capitalize on these markets and expand the markets. So I would say when I was in Vermont during my time at Vermont Law School.
And of all the products that you've done, which one's your favorite one?
My personal favorite is Belize. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Belize on Keycocker. So returning there to do one of our first projects that's actually held in perpetuity that connects the largest reserve north of the Amazon would have to be one of my favorite.
Very nice. Okay, so you're real excited about carbon credits. You see the future. Everything seems good. And we get this question more than anything. And I'm relatively new. I thought I knew what I was talking about, but obviously I have some questions myself. So on my notes here, the question that comes up most is the process: identifying, evaluating, documenting, registering, approval, certification. Can you walk us through? Well, let's take your first or the asset you just closed on, 1.4 million hectares in Tanzania. Walk us through the process of how that becomes a carbon credit.
Okay. Sorry about the dogs growling in the background. What happens is we identify areas. Okay. Now, what we did, Shenna and I sat down about a year ago and we looked at the planet and we looked at a map and we said, where can we make the biggest difference? Where are the biggest forests left on this planet? We are deforesting the planet at a rapid rate. In 2020, 8% of the planet was cut down for what they call biomass electricity, which some rocket scientist says is renewable, which I don't know how it is, because it takes 50 to 1,000 years for those forests to grow back. So we started looking at where can we make the biggest difference? How can we get the biggest things? Because what we recognize is the number of carbon credits on this planet is some number X. And X is a declining number due to deforestation, encroachment, agriculture, etc. And we started looking at it and we looked at the rate of decline. And we started picking places where we can make a difference. Tanzania is one of them. Tanzania has massive natural resources that are undeveloped. So what we do is we go in, we meet with government officials, we meet with landholders, we meet with stakeholders, communities, and we get paperwork going that locks up our rights to the carbon credits. Okay, we've done that now across Central and South America, Asia, and Africa, making us now the world's largest nature-based carbon credit company in the world. We control about half of the worldwide market at this point.
Wow.
And that number will continue to increase because other people are asleep at the wheel and they're looking at projects that are small. Okay, so everybody's screwing around with 20,000, 30,000 acre projects and things like that, which aren't going to produce large carbon offsets. What we also recognize is the large companies. Microsoft approached us about a year ago to work with us to try to fulfill their goal of being net zero. Now, a company like Microsoft, in order to be net zero, needs approximately 2 to 5 million tons of carbon offsets a year. No one else really can supply those numbers. So we started doing bigger and bigger things. Okay, now, so we go in, first step, secure the rights. The second step is we do a pre-feasibility study. That study establishes how much carbon is going to be sequestered by the project. Okay, in other words, how much carbon is being sucked out of the atmosphere. Now, when I say carbon, I'm using that word generically. In the industry, we refer to carbon because carbon dioxide is the biggest greenhouse gas. Okay. However, carbon, every greenhouse gas is converted to a carbon equivalent. So we deal in carbon because that's what we convert everything to. So in the pre-feasibility, we establish a baseline of where the project is, how much more carbon will be sucked out of the atmosphere by the project, and we establish how many credits will be created. In other words, how many tons of carbon will be sucked out of the atmosphere over the next 30 years. The contracts are for 30 years. Every year, a certain number of tons drop. What that means is a certain number of tons of carbon dioxide are sucked out of the atmosphere that year. That means that we, as a project, are sucking X number of tons. Now, we create what's called a carbon offset certificate, which is registered with a registry like Verra. Verra comes in and validates and verifies. After the initial pre-feasibility, we do what's called a PDD, project description document, that establishes all the parameters of the science behind the project. That gets filed with Verra. Verra reviews it, makes sure it meets the standard. They do some auditing and verification. Then the number of credits over the next 30 years is basically established. Okay. We can then go to a company, let's use General Motors. General Motors has multiple facilities and they have a carbon footprint where they are emitting carbon into the atmosphere. They can then buy an offset from us, which offsets their carbon footprint. So carbon offsetting versus other mechanisms is like a double entry accounting system. For every offset, it matches with an emission. When they use the certificate, it's called having it retired. Okay.
So your question, Andy, just about the steps. I also wanted to emphasize, as Ralph was saying, we utilize multi-tier stakeholders, shareholders from the very beginning. So NGOs, governments, local community members, that's within the first step.
Nice. Okay. Thank you. So that's the process and how we get to really, when I look at the process, people don't understand that really a carbon credit is an NFT, if you will, and then we tokenize the NFT and we distribute it that way. So each one of our coins is 1/10 of one CMXT, which is 1 ton of carbon, correct?
One XCO2 token represents 1/10 of a ton.
Okay.
So 10 tokens equals 1 ton of carbon. Okay. Now, then we do have an NFT. It is not out yet, but the NFT will be back. One NFT, I believe, will have 10 tokens behind it.
Nice. Okay, very good. So we've got the process down. We've kind of we know our why, because it's pretty obvious that we haven't been real good stewards of this earth. So next, I'd like to move into growth. When we talked, Ralph, I don't know, it's probably been a week or earlier in the week, we talked about investment horizons and certain days that are very significant and important. And when I look at the growth and the keys to growth, I really broke it down 4 ways. Rising climate targets, we had regulatory compliance, we had increased corporate participation, and then the last one, what I call crypto carbon, which is kind of cross-pollinating people in crypto with the carbon credit world. So those are my kind of 4 key, I think, pillars of growth. How do you see growth? And talk about that investment horizon that we spoke about and those dates that are so important.
Okay. The 3 key dates that I talked to you about, well, there are a couple of things you should be aware of. Okay. The UN, and Shenna can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the UN and some of the other not regulatory is the wrong word, but the other interested parties in the UN and governments, et cetera, have basically established that after 5 years, the carbon credit that you've created should be used within 5 years of it being created. Okay. So it does have a limited life. Now, after 5 years, people are doing things with them, not a lot of which is ethical. So a lot of this comes down to the ethics of the process. Okay. So that's one date. 2030 is another date. 2050 is another date. 2030 and 2050 are established in the Paris Accord, the Kyoto Accord. Okay, those are 2 key dates in this industry. And then there's a third date that I use, which is a date that no one really knows what it is. Okay, the shortest I've seen is 10 years. The longest I've seen is 100 years. And that is the date at which everything falls apart. Okay, that's when Armageddon happens, which is we are over the point that we can change or slow or do something to what's happening with the climate, in which case you're going to have floods, you're going to have, all the worst things in the Bible. are going to be coming up. It's going to be basically Armageddon. You're going to have floods, tidal waves, food shortages. Now, we're starting to see that right now. This year, the planet produced 35% less food this year than it did last year with a growing population. This is a problem. Okay, so we have food shortages already. You're starting to see them in the U.S. for the first time. If you go into a grocery store here, you're seeing empty shelves. That's because of shortages. And it's not the supply chain, and it's not the war in the Ukraine. It's not any of those things. It's the fact that they're plowing crops into the ground. It's the fact that in Michigan, for example, a good friend of mine has a large dairy, and they make ice cream. They cannot, with their cows, for the last 25 or 30 years, they have been producing enough cream with their own herd of cows to produce their ice cream. Today, they have to go out and buy cream in the wholesale market because the heat is so high that the cows are producing less cream. Okay, so we are seeing these things start. So that date may be sooner than we'd like to know. If nothing happens in the U.S., there will be a desert between the Appalachians and the Rocky Mountains within the next 50 years. Again, that's the breadbasket of the world. So that date is something that's out there. Now, the difference between carbon offsets and the governmental type of regulation, which is carbon taxes or allowances or all the mandatory instruments that are out there, the big difference is those are a situation where it is a pay to play. You're paying money to the government to allow you to pollute. In a carbon offset, there is a direct offset related to what you're doing. Okay, you're not just pouring money into a government entity. The U.S. government started regulating the environment in 1899. What has it gotten us? We're at the verge of economic Armageddon. So this is a way for the market to come in and say, hey, we're going to slow this, possibly reverse this by doing these various environmental projects worldwide. Now, from an economic point of view, remember, the number of offsets and the ability of this planet to offset its emissions is declining. So demand by companies, by individuals, and by the world to offset carbon emissions is increasing, which means demand for these products is increasing while the supply is decreasing. Now, even if the supply was static, you've got a disconnect between the demand and the supply, because the planet's ability to offset our carbon emissions right now is not a one-to-one situation. Okay, we're emitting more than we can offset. So eventually, carbon offsets will continue to rise in price. Last year, prices for carbon offsets went up 400%. Forbes predicted that carbon would hit 100 a ton by the end of 22. That happened towards the end of 2021. Okay, so right now, this is an increasing price market. We are in a bull market for carbon offsets. Now, the tokens were designed to allow individuals and small companies to offset their carbon footprint. But on an investment point of view, today at the prices we're talking is a very solid investment because it is going to move in parity with carbon pricing by the end of the year, in which case it's going to keep moving at that percentage, whatever it is, at the market rate. That will make these tokens increase in value fairly significantly from where they're trading today. I mean, you should see fairly good upside. Now, that being said, be aware that there's a limited life on them. So if you're speculating and you don't intend to offset your footprint, what you need to do is recognize that at some point in the future, the price would naturally decline because for lack of a better word, you're going to model it financially similar to an option or a warrant that's 5 years out. Okay, so over time, it's going to have a huge upside, and then 5 years from now, it could decline, which means if you're speculating, you're going to get out.
Very good. Thank you. You just fell off the earth, Ralph. I don't know what just. Are you all right?
I'm here. I just put my phone down. To get it done.
It looked like you fell off the earth.
Well, I'm like Elon Musk.
Oh, goodness.
My thing for climate change, I'm just going to leave.
Wow. Okay. That's so funny. But you're all right, right?
Yeah,
You
no, I'm
all
good.
right. Sheena, would you like to interject anything on what Ralph just had to say? Oh my goodness.
I'm still thinking of Ralph falling off the earth. But no, as Ralph was saying, these are critical dates. And as we continue to see these deadlines, and something else to mention is we're seeing these regulatory bodies disclosure, investment disclosure proposed by the SEC, which is going to start to see more of a framework around carbon offsets. As Ralph was saying, a lot of companies have made promises to be net zero carbon neutral, some by 2025, Amazon by 2030, Google, Adidas, Patagonia. I mean, the list goes on and on. We have seen criminal cases brought against companies, greenwashing suits, etc., for companies not meeting these proclaimed demands. So I think as we continue to see the demand increase and the supply is decreasing, some of those pinnacle moments are going to be at 2030, which is a 7-year mark. And then 2050, we're talking 27 years out.
Wow,
So this market does seem to have quite a bit of longevity. And as Ralph was touching on, we will see a few spikes during that duration.
all right. Well, thanks, guys. I mean, great content. It'll explain a lot of things on how we do it, what we're doing, why we're doing it. Let's talk about price just real quick. One of the biggest things, as usual, is usually who's the company? Is it a scam? What assurances do we have? So how did we get to, we've been putting out that the XCO2 coin will be $7.50 on an exchange. I don't know if you want us to divulge that exchange yet or what's going on there. You can if you'd like.
Andy, there are a couple things. One,
okay.
I may be smart, but I'm not smart enough to run a scam. Those guys are pretty bright. They may be criminals, but they're bright. This is all verifiable and backed by carbon credits. We have the projects, we have the credits. Every coin that we sell has collateral backing it. So it is a collateral backed token. It is not any way, shape, or form a scam. You can look through to the documents. Anybody that wants to do due diligence can do that, and we can provide the various documents that you would need to see that. So from that point of view, the 750 is, and Shenna can talk about this more than I can, is based on a $75 a ton of carbon. The contract today is tied or tethered somehow to Ethereum. Part of that was we had to get it out into the market. And part of that, I think, was we wanted it tethered to carbon, but there was no mechanism to do that at that time. There is today. So it's going to be changed to tether the coin to the price of carbon, not to the price of Ethereum. When that happens, you'll see a bump in price on that to 750. In terms of exchanges, we are talking to a number of exchanges right now. Some of the biggest ones in the world, some of the most prestigious. Others are, we're kind of talking to, but we're getting bad feedback. Don't list theirs type of stuff. So the coin will ultimately get listed on an exchange and be tradable. So will the NFT.
Nice. Thank you. All right. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Shenna?
Sure. So on that pricing mechanism, Andy, we have seen a lot of fraud in the industry. And because of the fraud, these are projects that are offering offsets for $1, $2, $3. So with the established pricing mechanism, it's a guideline by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, that established a program that will actually work. So if we continue to see companies that are able to buy offsets for $1 or $2, it's not going to create change. The mechanism for carbon offsets is to create sustainable development. If there is not a pricing mechanism that would require companies to further their development, then it's business as usual.
Okay. Thanks. I appreciate it. Okay. So I get this question. There's a lot of companies out there proclaiming to having carbon credits. I know we're one of the very first in the world. We're innovative. We're forward thinking. You guys got great experience. Ralph's got the financial side. You have the environmental side. You both are attorneys, so you understand all the structure. And, I grew up on a farm in Ohio, Ralph. I didn't grow up as part of royalty, but nevertheless, talk about what makes us unique, the blockchain. How do we validate? What is the gold standard of carbon credits? So we know exactly what we're dealing with.
So the gold standard for us, it's across different platforms. So gold is in reference a generic term, that meaning the highest quality. So our offsets are climate, community, and biodiversity. That means that what we're doing is going to affect climate change in a positive outcome. It means that we're actually providing infrastructure for local communities, providing microfinance projects, resources, whether that be for education, healthcare, roads established within these local communities, and we're protecting biodiversity, which, as we've seen, the planet as a whole has to be balanced within its biodiversity, not only of humans, but of other species as well.
Well, that's a beautiful thought right there. That should be your mission statement, that paragraph, and
Thanks.
everything would be golden. So we've kind of explained who you are, what we're doing, how it's derived, how it's monetized, if you will, how the process works, the assets, the benefits, what makes us unique. So here we are. What are we? The fourth quarter of the year? Not quite yet. We've got an exciting fourth quarter lined up. And tell us about, what do we got? Headquarters in Miami, being on an exchange. You guys are going to what? Egypt. You're going to go public. You're going to, a lot going on. So, PR out of New York. So explain, you're kind of like, I didn't know I was going to get you both on the call today because you guys both are extensive travelers and you're hard to get a hold of sometimes because you're out doing your projects. But when I got both of you, I thought, okay, here's what we're going to do in the next quarter. So give us an overview of what's cooking for the next quarter, Shenna.
That sounds great. So we just recently signed an MOU with Suriname, with the vice president of Suriname. We're protecting over 1.24 million hectares. This particular project is in connection with the Trio tribe. It is one of the most strategic avoided deforestation projects that I've seen come on the market. So what we were able to do is, where the logging road ends in the southern portion of Suriname, we are protecting 1.24 million acres at the end of the road. So there's no way for logging development to occur past that point.
Nice. We saw the slide. One was a barren and it looked like it was separated by a creek, and then it had the rest of the forest there.
Oh, that's actually our Belize project. So the protected area is obviously on the left. What's on the right is industrial agriculture.
Okay. So we've got this asset and we have an NFT. Do you foresee the future of having other assets that back other NFTs that will come to market?
We are looking at doing that. So right now, XCO2 is strictly limited to our highest standard possible, the CCB standard.
Okay.
And that we want to have a map so individuals can actually choose the particular regions and the projects that they want to invest in.
That sounds awesome. So quickly tell people the difference between, because all carbon credits are not the same, whether it be in agroforestry, whether it be in hydro or whatever it would be. The slide that you provided showed 170 different ones. And we typically stay in agroforestry because they're the highest standard. Is that really the reason why?
Well, nature-based, not necessarily agroforestry, but this climate, community, and biodiversity. It makes it inclusive. So you have various shareholders, community, indigenous members who are sitting at the same table as government officials.
Very nice. Okay. Anything you'd like to share at this point, Ralph? I was trying to keep this to a half an hour or less because I know you guys are stressed for time like we were earlier in the week and you had big meetings. I appreciate you both coming on the call today. It'll help us a lot with marketing this, with the foundation, the longevity, the security, to the trust that there is a company behind this. There are real owners. that this isn't some kind of, carbon credit scam from written, in Dominican Republic or some kind of nonsense. This is a verifiable assets under management. So the tokens are 100% backed by assets. Is that fair to say, Shenna?
Yes, absolutely, Andy. It's always nice to meet the people behind the scenes. And as Ralph was saying, that's why we want to utilize blockchain technology. So everything has been changed within the serial number, and there he is.
Well, let's end with this. Explain why blockchain in this ecosystem is so valuable because of all the nonsense that's out there.
Before Shenna can answer that, but before she does, let me just mention from a credibility point of view.
Okay.
In terms of who we are and where we are, we have passed due diligence with organizations like Morgan Stanley. Our auditors are Deloitte and Touche. Our lawyers are Kidwalader, Wickersham and Taft in New York, which is the oldest law firm in the U.S. We have Rubenstein doing our PR. So we have been through the gamut of people looking behind what we're doing. This is to prove out the credibility of it. And blockchain is just, and Shenna can get to that, blockchain is just a very good way to eliminate dishonesty that's going on in our industry. And put in perspective on that, Interpol published a piece a couple of years ago talking about fraud in carbon credits. And if you look at the top 10 frauds that they identified, they could be eliminated by blockchain.
Well, a lot of fraud around the world could be eliminated by blockchain, whatever that looks like, across all assets and a lot of different verticals. So do you want to explain blockchain, since you're the webmaster 3.0, Shenna?
Andy, I'm just amazed every day and learning like everyone else. And Web3 space is going to allow us to actually overlay live, real time AI technology so that one can see the surveillance cameras on ground, drones in the air. So this NFT that one purchases, XCO2 as well, can have this interactive experience, this connection of exactly where you are, what you are protecting, and the communities that you're affecting.
Well, that's neat. Kind of like the cameras at the zoo. You can watch the tigers live.
Yes, exactly.
I gotcha. Okay, that's a cool idea.
Or tapirs, or.
Have you seen any tigers in any of these remote places that you've been?
We've seen jaguar footprints.
Yeah.
And, we've seen tapirs, but no, we are going to Indonesia in October. So we'll.
So that would be where we would see tigers. Indonesia is the last place on the planet where tigers, elephants, and orangutans still live in the wild together.
Wow.
So it's a very critical area. One species of orangutan around October, November timeframe of last year went extinct. It was the first time in many years that a large mammal went extinct. So it is actually critical from some point of view. And for those people who don't understand biodiversity on the plant side, remember that most medicines that you use and most pharmaceutical products that you use come from plants. So every time a plant goes extinct, it may be the plant that has the chemical compound that could be the cure for cancer. You never know. So keeping biodiversity and maintaining or reducing the rate at which species are going extinct, which is higher than you want to know, is very important for the longevity of our species. I love when people say save the planet. The planet's going to be fine. Venus, beautiful planet. You just can't live on it. This is about saving the human species on the planet.
Okay. Thank you, Ralph. Anything you'd like to add before we go, Shenna? Close us out with, I don't know, a frog story or something.
A frog story. I think Ralph summed it up. There's something greater behind XCO2, and we have a lot on the line. And as Ralph was saying, this is interconnected to the well-being of the human species. And what we are doing, we've signed on to the 30 by 30 initiative by the UN. which is the United Nations is saying if we do not protect 30% of this planet by 2030, we're going to hit that critical point of 1.5 degrees Celsius. I mean, we're talking about hitting the point of no return. Coral reefs are gone, the planet's on fire, ice caps are melting. I mean, whether or not people believe, the signs are revealing themselves. So,
well, you'd probably want to be on the right side of it anyway. So,
if you're going to gamble.
Because what was the sentence you said the other day? Trees can live without us, but we can't live without trees.
Exactly.
There it is. So, guys, we're going to end with that. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Shenna and Ralph. I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody on the call. Of course, we'll be doing another call Sunday night at 8 p.m. as usual with the regular scheduled programming. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, Ralph.
Everyone.